can we learn about leadership from a dog trainer? I'm interested to know if dogs, like horses, are always looking for a leader or how this might be different. This interview with Luzelle didn't disappoint. We touched on a lot of different leadership topics, and the parallel to our own performance, motivation, and how we learn and develop was startling. I especially enjoyed chatting to her about the power of praise and consequence, and how this needs to be matched to individuals. How a lot of our bad habits are self-rewarding, a lovely crossover. I was thinking about my kids and how this relates to what motivates them and how I parent them differently. So sort of first, perhaps just sort of say a little bit about what you do to start with.
Yeah. So I'm Luzelle, I'm the dog trainer for Solution K9. I got my first dog in 2007, so that was only 11 years ago.
Okay.
So I wasn't raised with dogs, I was raised with cats. And we had all sorts of animals though growing up. We had chickens and ducks and hamsters, because we grew up in South Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had chickens, ducks, hamsters, rabbits, all sorts of animals. Everything except for dogs.
So you've always had an interest in animals then?
Yeah, but just not really the dog side. So we got broken into when we were in Auckland, and then the community constable that came around, he said, get yourself a Rottweiler. And I was like, no, Rottweilers are drooly. I don't want one. Though I love them now, I didn't. Like, I was very dogs. So anyway, we ended up with this Doberman that we got from Doberman Rescue. And he was a nightmare. He pulled my arm out of its socket.
Oh my
gosh. Was like, seriously, I've still got a shoulder injury from him.
Oh my gosh, was that just kind of like jumping up on you?
No, just pulling on leash.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So pulling on leash is a real big thing for me now.
Yeah.
But yeah, getting him to walk on a loose leash was an impossible task. And then I got her, and then she wasn't as easy because she had all these health problems as well. And then she was scared of other dogs and stuff like that. So I got in touch with this guy in France called, I can't even remember his name, but he was lovely and he helped me with her. What they showed me was to be clearer in my communication with my dogs. So we started with clicker training and what I call marker training. You don't actually need a clicker, you just need a verbal word that means the same as a clicker. So I use the word YES. I have to spell it because if I say it, then they will expect a treat because it's a promise of payment. So what happens is a lot of dogs, they hear no so often that I worked with one recently, her name was Girl, and she'd never heard praise or anything before. She was just always told that she's doing it wrong, stop barking, stop being a pain. And then when we finally taught her with the yes word that she was doing the right thing, her whole world changed. She stopped barking. She finally understood what they wanted, and it made a huge difference in her life. And the same with these dogs. All dogs, yeah.
So you're saying that actually the positive affirmation is far more impactful than the negative?
No, not necessarily, because it depends on the dog. You must have consequences for bad choices, but you also should reward good choices because it helps the dog's understanding of both. Things like chasing, because they're predatory animals, chasing, barking, sniffing, these are all self-rewarding behaviours. I mean, it's really a struggle to get dogs out of those sort of behaviours. You can get quite a bit done with positive reward-based training, but with the more difficult dogs, there needs to be a consequence, like this one. German Shepherds love the sound of their own voice. So Cassie would go out in the morning at 6 o'clock when I'd let them out, and she'd go, "Rrr, rrr, rrr, rrr." And yeah, she would just go and bark. There was nothing to bark at. It was just habit. So she would go out and bark at and
she'd enjoy doing it. Yeah,
that's what I do when I go outside. So in the end, I was like, I tried a lot of things before I thought, you know what, this dog really hates being picked up. Let's use that as a consequence. So I would just say, oh, Cassie, you didn't bark, did you? But you have to do it every time. And I would just pick her up, and within 1 week, her barking stopped, because she was so, it was the right consequence for her. You could see if I let her out, she'd have this, I want to bark, but I don't like being picked up. I just won't bark now.
So that's really interesting, because you're saying actually the consequences have to match the individual dog.
Yeah. It depends on the animal, what you need to use. So you can't have a bunch of people and have the same consequence for everyone, because it will affect different people differently. And the same with the animals. You have to pick the consequence that matches the animal. And sometimes you have to try a few consequences before you find the right one. But you don't want to use something that makes them petrified or fearful. So like if you're scared of spiders, if I decided that your consequence would be throwing spiders on you, you would it would wreck you. So we're not going to use something that you're fearful of, just something that you dislike enough not to do it again.
Talk about the other side, so there's the positive affirmation sort of with dogs. How does that work?
Okay, so with what you do, I'm sure you're familiar with Pavlov's dog. Yeah. So what Pavlov does, he's a Russian psychologist. The experiment was horrible, so if you want to read it, just be warned. But what he found was that if he rang a bell before the dogs got fed, they would start drooling. So they would expect food on the ringing of the bell. But if he rang the bell during or after giving them food, there would be no association. So if you, to make that positive, even your negative words mean anything, the word needs to happen just before the consequence, whether the consequence is good or bad. You need to make sure that word happens just before. So with Cassie, if we're using her negative thing, I would say, oh no, you didn't bark, did you? And then I'd go pick her up. So that was her negative association. But the positive word for my dogs, I generally have a verbal marker, which is the YES word, because the YES word is the promise, or whatever your word is the promise of the consequence. So,
or the other way around, it's the promise of something positive.
A positive, consequence could be positive or negative. So a consequence could be you getting a treat, or a consequence could be you getting picked up.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
It's just, you don't always have to have treats on you, but it's the promise of payment, whether you use chicken or kibble or cheese. That's your currency you're paying them with. So if you're paying them with 20 cents when someone's just mowed the lawns and spent 2 hours mowing the lawns, that's not going to cut it. So if you're trying to pay your dog with kibble and they've just done something really exciting, or there's a big distraction there, say there's another dog there, and you're paying them with kibble, that's not going to be good enough. So either you need to balance out your books and use something more appropriate. I mean, you can't always pay them with something, you might not have it. So that's where the negative consequences come in. So
it's really interesting with the word as well, because we often give, if we think about sort of interaction in leadership, we think when we give a negative consequence, we're giving the verbal cue and then the physical action. We don't always do the same with the positive. Which is really interesting.
I know. So, So with you, definitely, especially as a leader, and this is where I used to have huge problems because previous life I worked as anywhere from a receptionist to a PA to CEOs. So I'm quite familiar about what your side, what you're doing. So I found that the bosses were always very quick to tell you when you did wrong, but I wanted them to recognize when I did the right thing and be prepared to reward me for it as well. So I found that was quite lacking, because I shouldn't have to come to you for a pay rise or anything. Like, why? I'm your staff. It's up to you as the leader to recognize when I've done good. The same as when you're going to give me a consequence for doing bad. But it's our human nature, even with a lot of dog owners I see, they're so quick to notice when the dog did something wrong. They totally, like when the dog did something right, they just carry on and ignore it. It's like, no, we celebrate that. That was huge.
And that has a huge impact on their behaviour, doesn't it?
And your relationship with your dog. Your dog's willing to work so much harder because, that made you happy. I'll do more of that because they want to make you happy.
Yes. And what I notice as well that's interesting is either you have people will give the reward, but not the verbal cue, or they'll give the verbal cue without the reward. So they'll say, great job, without forgetting about the physical action that follows. But That's a great analogy, I think, of actually making sure that there's the consistency with the cue and the reward. Yeah. And like you say, that the reward is actually appropriate to what's
the
happened.
Reward.
Yes.
That's why I call it a consequence, because the consequence, whether it's good or bad, for good or bad actions, it needs to match the individual.
Talk to me a little bit about sort of your body language and your posture, and how important that is for training your dog.
Oh, body language is huge when it comes to training. I recently was out with a group of people, and there were some loose dogs around, and the guy's posture was really bent over, and one of the dogs came up behind him. I didn't quite know what he was like with dogs, so his posture was really bent over, and the dog came up behind him and sniffed him. Now, it's not, I didn't think the dogs would do anything. They looked quite young, but as they got older, they would start to become problematic. I just called his name and said, just walk up straight. And as soon as he rightened his posture, the dog backed off from him.
Wow. So the dog was recognizing him as a leader. Is that what was the sort of significance, do you think, of the dog?
Dogs tend to pick on weakness.
Okay.
Yeah. So, not that and us humans do that too.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
Whether you want to admit it or not, it's what happens. So if somebody appears weak, the dog is going to pick on them. It's just what happens. It's the reality of life. Not all dogs, of course, but some.
Is it with dogs, it's kind of, like a hierarchy, either I'm above you or I'm below you? Is it sort of assessing status in that sort of situation?
That I don't see. The whole dominance theory, hierarchy theory is really messy, because even with us people, it's really messy. With us people, it's easier because we've got titles. But I mean, dogs don't have titles. They've got either you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. That's the only way they can assess. Now, for instance, Kaz here because her shape is wrong, because of German Shepherds have been bred to be a little bit more hunchy. So that gives off the appearance of a little bit more of a weaker dog as well. She is also a more nervous dog, so she gives off that impression. So a lot of it has to do with posture among dogs, but also you've got to keep in mind there's also such a thing as female dogs often just like us females, female dogs get away with a lot more than male dogs. So like if a male dog will allow a female to take their toys off them, some, not all, some, whereas a male dog wouldn't allow another male to do that. Also, there's puppy license. And again, not all dogs recognize this, so we still have to keep in mind they're individuals. So an adult dog will allow a puppy to do a lot more than an adult dog. So whereas the puppy might not get told off if they go near the toys or food and stuff, an adult dog would. So if that makes sense?
Absolutely, and that's very much the same for us, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So you treat children with a lot more care. But then again, not every dog is like this.
So going back to the posture then, is it more, rather than sort of, you're saying that you're either doing it right or you're not, is that a case of, because dogs are pack animals, aren't they? So is that the case of, there's a leader and then there's the pack, and you're either sort of emulating that or not? Or talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, so the pack thing is messy.
Okay.
What science thought was the situation and what science thinks now is completely different. You have to keep in mind, like, not every dog is a capable leader. All right, so I know one dog, or maybe two or three, that would be leaders no matter where you put them. They have firm rules, no other dog's allowed to break them, and they just have to look at the other dogs, and the dogs know, okay, I won't push it. But for the majority of dogs, like Kaz, for instance, here, she is a German Shepherd. Now, German Shepherds, they're accountants and they're CEOs. If there are no rules, they'll step up and make the rules themselves. So this is why a lot of German Shepherds have a lot of problems.
Okay.
Because of that, there's leadership lacking
then they're going to step up and fill that space.
Exactly.
But if they've got strong leadership, they'll sit back and go, oh, it's okay, someone's got it.
You just do it as long as you're fair and firm. So you have to be fair. Like, you can't change the rules on them because they don't like change.
Yes.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Yeah, totally. You mentioned before as well about body language. You're saying that, dogs see before they hear, as an analogy for, because the body language that you're showing is so important.
Yeah, so this is also why when you're teaching a verbal marker for good or bad, you have to say or click before you reach to get your treat. So your dog, if you click at the same time you're reaching to get the treat, the dog's going to not pay attention to the click, they're going to pay attention to that reaching action. And you don't want that, especially when you're training sport dogs. So dogs pay attention to what they see first, and secondly to what they hear. So this is why getting dogs to listen to verbal cues is quite difficult, because it's so easy for them to to wait till they see something. They don't really, dogs don't bark all the orders at each other. Their communication is through stares, posture. So posturing, if you watch them, they're really quiet when they're running around. It's only and a barky dog is generally considered to be a little bit more insecure.
So would you say sort of when you're training dog owners, is that a sort of typical mistake that owners make? Is they're trying to be verbal, but they're not so much aware about what they're doing with their bodies?
That's a big thing. But I mean, with owners, the biggest thing is they expect their dogs to learn by osmosis. So they get this puppy and they say sit, and they expect the dog to automatically know what sit is without teaching them. So us humans, we're very lazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very funny actually, because I'd say that was an exact parallel to managers that I work with, that they want their employees to just perform well. And just do it on their own and somehow magically be able to do that.
It doesn't happen by osmosis. You've actually got to teach and educate.
Yes. I mean, I sort of think about that in leadership is, the balance of authority and approachability.
Yeah.
So to me as a leader, you need to provide that consistency and that authority and that power and status, but also very much you need to be a teacher and a coach. So you need people to feel that they can come to you, they can talk to you, they can talk things through, and you've got that sort of rapport with them.
Yeah, and you need exactly the same with dogs, because if your dogs are petrified to come to you, you've got dogs that are going to run away from you, and they're not going to come back when you call and stuff like that. So you need to teach them that they need to do as you say, but also that if you say something, it's going to happen, and they just need to toe the line, basically.
Yes. So going back then to my earlier question just around the mistakes. What are the sort of the common things around body language that people are sort of not doing well?
Posture. It's one of my main things I explain to clients. If you're walking like this, your dog is never going to see you as a leader. You have to put your shoulders back. Breathe in deep, but there's a few other things this is a little bit more subtle, and this takes a lot of time, and I don't always get to cover this, is your voice matters too. So if you've got a high-pitched, excitable voice, high-pitched, excitable barks show weakness and is play. So if you can't expect your dog to listen when you're in a high-pitched state. So you need to lower your tone of voice and speak calmly. It's, come on, over here, let's go. You also reduce how much you talk. Us humans, we just babble on.
Yes. I mean, the same very much, we're very much, we don't necessarily think about this, but we're very affected by tone of voice as well. Yeah. Lower tone of voice does equal more power. Yeah. And I think it's interesting that sort of the male-female thing, because men do naturally have lower voices. But as women, if we lower our voices and slow down our speaking, it's tremendous. The effect that it actually has on other people.
And here's the other funny thing. A lot of people say, my dog will listen to my husband, but not to me.
Yes.
Yeah. So men are tend to also be a little bit more firmer with what they ask. So now this one is creeping up here, and I'm not being an effective leader because I think this is cute. So this, no, you're not going over there. No. This is an example of me not being an effective leader. Raven, what are you doing? Back on your bed, please.
So it's having that consistency.
No. Yeah, and she's, lie down, no. So there's a new movement saying you can't even say no to your dog. And I do sort of understand why they say that.
Why would they say that?
It's because everybody's like, no. And the poor dog thinks its name is no because they hear no so often. Instead of just saying it calmly, no, you're not going to do that, and help them do the right thing like I just did here with Raven.
I do hear that quite a lot. You hear people sort of barking at their dogs, don't you?
And their kids too, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just like, no. Oh.
And I do think, is that really, because it seems like such a tremendous amount of energy, negative energy as well, all the time. Is that really effective?
No,
is that really the best way to get them?
The dogs tune you out. Yes. The more you talk, the more your dogs tune you out.
Yes.
So don't babble to your dog all day, just keep it down, say the important things.
Yes, so keep it down, say less, be calm. Talking about sort of, so you did mention that before we started the interview, we were talking a little bit about stress and the effect that has. I mean, I know, in leadership, I talk a lot about stress because, like you were saying, being an effective leader is about consistency. And as soon as you're stressed, you're not consistent. You're behaving in a very different manner. Yeah. How does that?
When your adrenaline kicks in, your body's in fight or flight mode, and you cannot make clear decisions when that happens. So you really need to, I say to clients, in an emergency, would you rather have a librarian or a firefighter? So a firefighter has been taught how to deal with emergencies, and they're calm in that situation. A librarian has had no training whatsoever, and you kind of get the impression of this woman freaking out.
Yes, totally.
And like, just about in tears.
Or just running away.
Exactly. It's just like, I'm not going to follow a librarian, I'm going to follow a firefighter. So you really need to be your dog's firefighter or your policeman or something. Somebody with authority that can take charge of the situation in a calm manner. So say, for instance, there's a dog rushing towards you. Now, I do this all the time. I'll start yelling at the owner, but that's not the right thing to do. You need to be calm and patient because your dogs need to see that you've got control of the situation. Especially if you've got a more nervous dog like Kaz here. She really needs to see that I can be there for her. So really, the action I would need to take is step out in front of my dog and put pressure on that dog to chase it away. Confidently, calmly, because I like to say the other thing, whoever gets angry first has lost the game. So it's a game that you're playing, think of it as a game, but whoever, your voice wavers, and dogs are very sensitive to your tone of voice. Adrenaline, we're giving off scent all the time. So if you've just got a hit of adrenaline, your dogs can smell this. Your leash is really a telephone line to your dog. So even tightening your fingers around the leash, even though the leash itself isn't tightening, that's communicating to your dog. They're so sensitive. They know exactly what we're thinking, even before we're thinking it. A lot of them are so intuitive and in tune with what we want. They'll do it before we even say, especially if you've included your dog in your life and not just chuck them in the backyard to be a garden ornament.
Absolutely. What do you feel, sort of, because you've obviously, it sounds like very much you've learned a lot about humans.
And with dogs. I didn't know all this when I was in the office.
Yes, so fantastic. And, there's a lot of wisdom there that, I'm hearing. What do you think sort of are the kind of key things that you feel like you've really sort of picked up and sort of that sort of learning? What have they taught you?
Oh, definitely consistency, because I was I'm a shocker with this one because she is so nice. I don't actually, but she does become like this though when she needs to go to the toilet, or if she's hungry, or if she's thirsty, or if she's sleepy, she becomes a bit of a pain. So this is her saying she needs to go out, basically. This is not a cuddle session. This is
I need something
I
from
need
you.
something. Can you
Yes.
make it happen?
Yes.
Please. So I might just,
Yes,
let
do
her
that.
out. Raven, go toilet, please.
So just wanted to pick back up. So I was just asking you what you're learning, and you were talking about the sort of consistency. So just wanted to kind of follow, because that's a really interesting. And you were talking about sort of paying attention, because I think as managers we're often not paying attention. So we're not asking the why.
Well, you can't move forward unless you assess the problem. How to assess the problem, you have to know what's going on. So like if I have to get to know their personalities, I have to get to know what treats they like, what consequences they dislike and what consequences they like. I mean, it might not always be a treat that they get as a positive consequence. I mean, the Kaz likes balls. She'll work for a toy. So which toys does she like? She only likes one blue ball. So I can put out if I rewarded her with a green ball, that wouldn't be good enough. So you have to get to know what exactly motivates your dog, what they are scared of, what they don't like doing. So you can reduce the fear, improve their joy, and also things that they struggle with doing, so you can train them. So you as a manager, or you as a dog owner, or you have about a 50% effect on what your staff feel, do, say, and how they would act to things. So if you are an effective leader, leadership really means that everything will go really well. If you're not an effective leader, you will have problems.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that what you've been, because Raven is only 9 months old, and what you sort of mentioned is, those key things that you're wanting to instill, and one of them is just about recognizing you as a leader. Would that be mainly about body language, or what are the other things that you've been doing to get her to recognize you as a leader?
So we do leadership walks where I teach her to follow me. So this doesn't involve any treats or punishment or anything. This just involves walking and teaching her to keep an eye on what I'm doing. Because if she doesn't keep an eye on me, she is going to lose me, and I am not going to go and find her. And it's on those walks, it's also finding treasures, showing your dog, oh, look what I found. Come on, have a look. You'll like this. It's finding treasures together. It's an adventure, but it's also a responsibility.
Which, yes, it's a fantastic analogy, I think, to that whole concept of actually, being powerful. So having the posture, conveying authority, but also being someone that, has something to offer, something to teach, something to give.
But like the whole idea, like a lot of people think punishment makes them a good leader. No, like you hear a lot of, I have to show my dog who's boss. If you have to show your dog who's boss, you're not an effective leader. Your dog should recognize that anyway. But in the same token, you should be able to tell your dog, no, leave that. We're not going to go and chase the birds. We're going to, come on instead, come follow me, and we're going to find this. We'll go and find an eel in the river or something, I don't know. Come and do what I want to do, and it's actually going to be more fun. You're giving your dog freedom to make choices. You're not just dictating to them. So I'm not using punishment or rewards during those walks. It is, you can be a dog. You can have freedom within these confines. Us humans, we nag, we beg, we want to resort to punishment a little bit too quickly quite often. And let the dog learn through trial and error. Empower them through making wise decisions and unwise ones, because that's, after all, that's how we learn best. We learn through our mistakes and our successes. So you do more of what's successful and you do less of what's unsuccessful. Same with dogs. They do more of what gets them the right results and less of what doesn't get them the right results.
Yes, fantastic. That's brilliant. Would be lovely if you could show us perhaps some of the exercises that you use to train, to do some training. That would be really, really great. Luzelle is going to show us an exercise she does with the dogs to teach them how to focus. And I was thinking, how often do we actually train ourselves or anybody else for focus? Often we're doing the exact opposite. We're asking our brain to learn how to get better at being distracted. And what difference would that make if we were actually training ourselves to focus better?
What we're doing here is usually I'm rewarding the dog for keeping themselves back, but because Raven has had so much training in self-control, I'm rewarding her for eye contact. So sometimes if she's had a really long run of trying, I give her one to motivate her and say, right, you're doing really well, keep it going. That wasn't quite what I wanted, but I'll reward you for that because of your effort. And then sometimes you're rewarding her for getting it right. So at first it was easier for her to get this right, but as the game progressed, you could see like her eyes just about split from one to the other, like she can't keep her focus on me. She is just trying to focus on that hand, and you could see the struggle. So when she got it right at the end, I'm rewarding her with all the treats rather than making her do it some more.
So I was fascinated talking to Luzelle about how she uses the word yes, Y-E-S, in the sense of praise, and this whole concept around giving a verbal marker before you give the reward. And I was thinking how rarely we do that with positive reinforcement. We do it really well with negative reinforcement. So we will give the verbal marker of, no, that's not appropriate, no, I don't like that, that's not okay, and then we give a consequence, but we don't do the same with praise. So I was really fascinated to see how that worked when she's training dogs.
This is the focus exercise. This is giving the clicker or your word meaning. So you want to pair your word with a treat. Now I'm just going to wait for the dog to focus on me. As soon as I get, even if it's just a quick eye flick, I'm going to say Y-E-S and give her a treat.
Yes.
Now notice, I say it, I pay it. The other rule is you speak first, then move to give your treat. And thirdly, don't use your Y-E-S as praise.
Yes.
Very good. That's it, we're done.
Ready?
Right, so now I'm going to show you how to use your Y-E-S word in some training. So I'm going to show you some things that Raven already knows, and I will reward her with her marker word and a treat when she gets it right. Yeah. Yes. I got too many jackets on. Yeah, that's it. We're done with that one.
I thought that this last exercise was really interesting. It made me think, as leaders, when we give praise, how specific are we really being? Do we really understand the behaviour we're being praised for? And does it encourage us to repeat that behaviour?
Now we've got the last game I'm going to show you is the name game. Basically how this works is I'm going to throw the treat, and when Raven goes to get that treat, I'm going to say her name, and as soon as she looks, I'm going to mark it with a Y-E-S, and then she's going to come back to me for a treat. So basically what she's going to do is learn to respond to her name. Now you want to say your marker word as soon as she turns, because it's actually that turning motion that you want to capture. You want her to know that she's right when she's turning towards you. That's the first step in doing the right thing. So you want her to turn so fast that she just about gives herself whiplash. So, and this is from another trainer called Leslie McDevitt, and she calls this the whiplash turn. So I'll show you how it works. Ready? Raven, yes. Now she's played this game quite a bit, so she's good at it. Raven, yes. Do I keep losing your treats? Raven, yes. Raven, yes. Nice work, that's it, we're done. Good dog.